Ladies and gentlemen, you might still be suffering from your Travis Scott-induced WrestleMania 41 hangover, but I'm gonna need you to snap out of it because we're already less than a week away from Backlash 2025 from St. Louis, Missouri. And if this feels like it came quick, it absolutely did. We only had about 3 weeks between WrestleMania 41 and Backlash 2025, and the feuds certainly feel like they were rushed, and some of them feel entirely undercooked. But nonetheless, in today's video, we're gonna be giving you my predictions for every single match that's currently announced for Backlash, as well as a match that's very heavily rumored to be at Backlash. I'm going to tell you who I think is going to win, why I think they're going to win, any surprises that could happen in the match, and I'm going to tell you where I think stories and feuds can go from Backlash 2025. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I am confident that you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. And don't forget, if you are looking for more than just daily wrestling content, come over to the Patreon, patreon.com/SantiZab, where you're going to get so much more extra content that we can never upload here on YouTube, like the Raw reviews, SmackDown reviews, and a bunch of watch-alongs that use real footage, so they would just get blocked here due to copyright. So come check it out, patreon.com/SantiZab, link in the description, link in the pinned comment. Let's jump into the predictions. Okay, so before we fully dive into things from a match-by-match perspective, let's talk about the obvious elephant in the room surrounding Backlash, which is just how rushed the build was to this show. And the obvious culprit for this is the fact that there was only 3 weeks or 3 episodes of Raw and 3 episodes of SmackDown to build out the storylines for this show. And I just can't help but think that this is just a self-inflicted wound by the WWE for their decision to have WrestleMania so deep into April when normally they would have just done this the first weekend of April. Nonetheless, that isn't the only reason. The other reason why many of the matches and feuds feel rushed is because most of the matches that are on this card aren't actual continuations of what happened at WrestleMania. Typically, Backlash is supposed to be the sequel of the stuff that happened at WrestleMania. Hell, for a while, this show was called WrestleMania Backlash. It's supposed to be the backlash of the stuff that happened at WrestleMania, but when you look at the matches like John Cena and Randy Orton, Lyra Valkyria versus Becky Lynch, Pat McAfee and Gunther, the heavily rumored to be announced Logan Paul and Jey Uso, none of these really had anything built up going into WrestleMania, so these storylines and feuds had to be basically built up entirely in the 3 weeks that they had between WrestleMania and Backlash. So I think for the future, maybe let's not do WrestleMania so deep into April, or maybe push back Backlash a little bit further into the year. I don't know. Nonetheless, the fact of the matter stands that most of the matches in the show, unfortunately, are very, very rushed. But hey, I still think it can be a fun show. So now let's jump into things from a match-by-match perspective. Let's talk about Lyra Valkyria defending her Women's Intercontinental Championship against Becky Lynch. This is a match that I'm personally really excited about. I'm excited about it for several reasons. I'm excited about the fact that we have 2 very talented women that I think could put on a sneaky match of the night contender, but I'm also equally excited about the fact that we finally have a feud and a storyline worthy of a PLE for one of the women's mid-card championships. And with all of the releases that have happened, most of these releases kind of paint the image that WWE isn't really caring a heck of a whole lot about the women's mid-card or the women's tag team scene, so it is refreshing nonetheless to see this title that wasn't getting a heck of a whole lot of love prior to WrestleMania finally getting that PLE shine. Now the question is it on the PLE purely because it's Becky Lynch? The answer right now is probably yeah, but I do hope that this could be a catalyst for WWE actually caring and putting some tender love and care into these mid-card divisions so that we can have this situation where we have women's mid-card titles in the actual PLE shows more often. But then again, it's also most likely just a symptom of having a big star, like how we had a bunch of tag team championship matches in the women's division on PLEs last year, but that was purely because it was Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill in the division. So I am concerned what will happen to this division when you remove Becky Lynch, but hey, we're here and I'm going to celebrate that nonetheless. There is a lot more at face value that's happening here. It's not just Lyra Valkyria trying to take revenge on Becky Lynch for taking her out after losing the women's tag titles, but there's also the ever-looming question of Bayley. Bayley, somebody that also wants to win the Women's Intercontinental Championship and somebody that was taken out by one of the participants in this match in Becky Lynch. So there is a big question surrounding the fact that Bayley could very well show up. And if she does show up to help Lyra Valkyria win, or does she show up to cost Lyra the match by attacking Becky Lynch? Nonetheless, I do think that somewhere down the line, we're going to be getting a big triple threat match. I do think that it's going to be Bayley versus Lyra Valkyria versus Becky Lynch for that Women's Intercontinental Championship. And based on the ties that all of them have to each other, I feel like it's best suited for Lyra Valkyria to go into that eventual triple threat match as the champion. So because of that, I do think that this is going to be a good match. I'm ultimately going to predict that Lyra Valkyria is going to win, but my prediction is that she's going to win because of help from Bayley. And I do think that the type of babyface that Lyra Valkyria is, she's not going to be happy by winning in such a manner. This gives Becky Lynch the ability to ask for a rematch, and this gives us the triple threat that I'm ultimately predicting that could happen later on in the summer. So in some way, shape, or form, I have Lyra Valkyria walking out still as the Women's Intercontinental Champion, either by actually winning the match because of interference from Bayley, or because she walks out of the title because the match ends in a disqualification, once again because of Bayley. But I think the big prediction here is that we're going to have involvement from Bayley. Let's move on to maybe one of the more random matches that WWE has ever put on for a WWE PLE, that being Gunther, the ring general, going up against Monday Night Raw commentator in Pat McAfee. This is one of those matches that was built entirely between WrestleMania and Backlash. So this had about 2 weeks worth of build in general. We had Gunther choking out Pat McAfee after he kind of lost his shit after losing the World Heavyweight Championship, tried to take out Michael Cole, and ultimately ended up choking out Pat McAfee. Then the week after, we have Pat McAfee cutting a fantastic promo, calling out Gunther and demanding that Nick Aldis give us a match between Gunther and Pat McAfee at Backlash. That's it. That's the entire feud. We still have one more episode of Monday Night Raw to hopefully flesh this out, but I don't think that this is going to need much more fleshing out. I feel like many of us, myself and probably you watching this video, can already sniff out that this is just a catalyst for something bigger for Gunther. That something bigger is most likely the Goldberg shadow that has been casted over Gunther for several months ever since their interaction at Backlash all the way back in October of last year. A shadow that loomed heavy enough that many people thought that we were going to be getting Gunther versus Goldberg either at Crown Jewel or maybe even WrestleMania. And Goldberg still has matches left in his WWE contract, and it only makes sense for Goldberg to be the one to make the save and stop the big bully Gunther from taking out those that aren't proper in-ring competitors. That's a role that Goldberg has played numerous times in his career in WCW and in the WWE, the guy that stops the big bad bully. So I do have Goldberg making an appearance here, but if I have my way, I hope that it's after Gunther has squashed Pat McAfee. One of the things that I don't want this match to be is a competitive back and forth. I want this match to be the utter annihilation of Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee does not need to get offense in this. He just needs to look like the underdog that's willing to put blood, sweat, and tears on the line, regardless of whether he dies, as he said in his promo, but that he's just a loyal ass dog, regardless of who's put in front of him. That, to me, will cement Pat McAfee as a winning babyface here, even if he is left in a puddle of his own blood. He just needs to hang in there and get destroyed, and he'll look great. I just don't think that there's any situation where I want to see Pat McAfee give Gunther a run for his money, even though we've seen Pat McAfee have matches in the past before, back in NXT and against Baron Corbin in the WWE main roster. But this is Gunther that we're talking about. This is who WWE has been trying to cement as like their big, scary bad guy of the quasi a main event scene. I call it quasi main event because I feel like WWE Championship is the real main event and World Heavyweight Championship are like your pseudo legendaries if you want to use Pokemon terms. And Pat McAfee not getting squashed by Gunther just doesn't make Gunther look very strong. So I am going to pick Gunther to win this, and hopefully it's a squash match. So then that begs the question, where does Goldberg, if it does end up being Goldberg, well, where does he factor into this equation? Well, if I'm a betting man, I think it would be some post-match shenanigans where Gunther continues to beat down on Pat McAfee. No amount of security is able to stop Gunther. He's got him destroyed, blood everywhere. He's bathing in his blood. And then finally, Goldberg's music hits. That to me is where you need to include Goldberg. Do not have Goldberg out there to cost Gunther the match. That is not something I want to see. Gunther should not be getting pinned in any capacity, even if it is from help from Goldberg. All right, so the prediction is Gunther winning. We have Gunther and Goldberg, or Gunnar and Gunberg going as a next step beyond this. I would assume that if they are going to go with the Goldberg route, that it's either going to be a match at SummerSlam or the heavily rumored, at least not fully announced as of the making of this video, Night of Champions scheduled to happen later in June. And we know that the Saudis, they love Goldberg over there. They really do. Maybe a little too much, because Goldberg has done way too many things over there where he's just won matches that he shouldn't be winning, and this is one of those situations. I don't love the idea of Gunther versus Goldberg, but if they're going to do it, at least I prefer it to not be for the World Heavyweight Championship, and I prefer it to not be a WrestleMania. So if you have to absolutely do this, then I guess Night of Champions, maybe even SummerSlam is fine.
I have to say the agility though.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Oh, white noise. Oh, on the hardest part of the ring.
Bro, what the hell? What the hell is that? That, folks, was a sneak peek of this week's Wrestling is Cool Match Club, available exclusively on patreon.com/SantiZap. The theme of this week is nothing but 5-star matches. So we'll be looking at the Lucha Brothers, Penta and Rey Fenix taking on Laredo Kid and Hijo del Vikingo from AAA in 2021. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood 1997. Shuri and Utami from Stardom back in 2021. Kenny Omega versus Rey Fenix from AEW Dynamite also in 2021. And we're looking at the Intercontinental Championship Classic between Gunther and Sheamus at Clash at the Castle 2022. You'll be getting this and more, like the Raw review, SmackDown reviews, all the PLE reviews, the podcast 3 days early, and a whole host of extra other pieces of content that never get uploaded here to YouTube because they would just get blocked due to copyright. So go check it out, patreon.com/SantiZap. I'm confident that if you try it even for just 1 month, that you will fall in love with it. If you're already a patron, thank you so much for your support, but now let's get you back to the video. Now let's move on to the fatal 4-way match for the United States Championship between champion Jacob Fatu going up against LA Knight, Damian Priest, and Drew McIntyre. This is basically like the only match on the show that actually has a proper continuation from things that happened at WrestleMania, because we did have Jacob Fatu beat LA Knight for the title, Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre, they had a match at WrestleMania, so now we're just sort of interweaving both of those WrestleMania narratives to give us what's happening here at Backlash. That's fine. At least I can get behind that. And because you're actually using something that was built at WrestleMania, now we're using everything that they use in the build-up to WrestleMania to use to the build-up to Backlash. See why this works, WWE? Let's do a little bit more of that in the future. The United States Championship picture on SmackDown is incredibly important right now. This is going to be where your next main eventers are made, especially right now with there being a big power vacuum with a lack of main eventers on SmackDown, because John Cena is a part-time champion, Cody Rhodes is on vacation, Roman Reigns is on forever vacation, and Randy Orton is feuding with a guy that's not there every single week. So right now, the United States Championship picture by default is the men's main event scene on SmackDown. So something that I've been saying is that we could very well see the next crop of the top main event guys coming out of this storyline here. And one of those guys that's really been shining in this feud has been LA Knight. That's not to say that I think that LA Knight is going to win this. I'm just saying that I think that beyond this feud and beyond this match, that I think that there could be big things for LA Knight, and obviously also for Drew McIntyre. I have been the least sold on Damian Priest and the most sold on LA Knight, and of course the champion Jacob Fatu, who has just been made out to look like $1 million on every episode of SmackDown in the build up to this. In terms of who I think is going to win this, I think it's going to be Jacob Fatu. I think that Jacob Fatu's inevitable clash, likely at SummerSlam, is going to be against Solo Sikoa, probably for that United States Championship. I feel like the only world where Jacob Fatu loses this match, it's because of Solo Sikoa, as Nick Aldis actually kind of hinted to, as he told Solo, like, actually, you're the reason why Jacob Fatu is getting screwed over. Maybe there's a world where Jacob Fatu loses the title because of involvement from Solo Sikoa here. But I will tell you, if he does lose the title, he ain't being the one getting pinned. I really just don't see that. But I also think that it's more likely that he's going to retain than he is to lose. So I am going to stick with Jacob Fatu here, and I'm going to predict that it's going to be Damian Priest that takes the pin here. And I'm picking Damian because of what I said earlier. I feel like Drew McIntyre is a lock for like when the main eventers come back, and LA Knight is the guy that's kind of been raising his stock the most to maybe go after the World Heavyweight title at some point. So give me Jacob Fatu. He's going to retain and down the line continue his feud and blossoming storyline against his, I guess not Us, but like bloodline member in Solo Sikoa. Now let's talk about a match that technically, as of the making of this video, has not not actually been confirmed, that being the match for the World Heavyweight Championship between Jey Uso and Logan Paul. 1 week, 1 episode of Monday Night Raw is what this storyline has had so far, with Logan Paul coming out saying that he beat AJ Styles, that his next option is to go after World Championship gold. Jey Uso saying that he ain't gonna lose to a bum-ass YouTuber, super kicking Logan Paul, and here we are. 1 episode. That's all we currently have in terms of a build, because they didn't build anything between these two on the Raw after WrestleMania. We're hopeful that they're going to continue to build this on the go-home episode of Monday Night Raw, but this is one of those storylines and one of those matches that is going into Backlash severely undercooked. In fact, I kind of hope that they don't announce it for Backlash, but I just don't see that happening. And I know that a lot of people, especially the internet wrestling community, hates this. I don't think that this is the greatest feud or anything of the matter, but I do think that this is maybe the best villain right now for Jey Uso to collect wins and start to look more like a credible world heavyweight champion. Hell, they friggin' did it with Cody Rhodes. I think it's gonna work with Jey Uso as well. I'm just looking forward to see how the internet is going to implode, not knowing who to root for, because the internet seems to hate both of these guys. But hey, at least the arena actually loves Jey Uso. In terms of who I think is going to win this match, I do think that it's Jey Uso. However, I don't think that this is like a complete foregone conclusion like it was with, say, Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles, where we just knew that Cody Rhodes wasn't going to win this. I think that Jey Uso is like the most obvious odds-on favorite, but I think that there's still a world, a micro universe where Logan Paul might actually win this, and that would absolutely melt everyone's brains and cause the internet to go into complete anarchy. But I say this because I do think that Jey Uso, in theory, is a beatable champion, much like Damian Priest last year was a beatable champion, and we needed Damian Priest to pick up these victories along the way to look more like a credible champion, and he ultimately ended up being a great champion once the dust settled of his championship reign, and I think that's ultimately what they're going to be doing here with Jey Uso. I wouldn't even be surprised if this has multiple matches, if maybe they run Jey Uso versus Logan Paul again at a Saudi show, or maybe at Saturday night's main event. But in terms of only giving these guys 2 episodes of Monday Night Raw to build out this match, 1, I do think that's unfair, and 2, I don't think that that's enough for fans to really sink their teeth into, which is why I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of May we get Jey Uso versus Logan Paul at Saturday night's main event as well. But yeah, I'm gonna lock it in. I feel like it's the best available option. I'm gonna go with Jey Uso retaining the World Heavyweight Championship here. And now let's talk about the undisputed WWE Championship match between John Cena and Randy Orton. It kind of felt like I just teleported myself back to 2009 as I said that match out loud, because we've gotten this match a million times in the past, but never with a heel John Cena and a babyface Randy Orton. It still feels wrong, like an episode of The Twilight Zone or like I'm watching Freaky Friday. Nonetheless, here we are, and there are some additional circumstances with it being Randy Orton's hometown, and with this being John Cena's first big championship defense since defeating Cody Rhodes after WrestleMania. It is refreshing to not have had The Rock be in here and create an expectation of something to come down the line for John Cena, because that's what he did with Cody Rhodes the night after WrestleMania 40, and because of that interaction, so many of us treated every single match and every single feud up until the thing with The Rock came back at full circle for Cody Rhodes as filler. This doesn't feel like filler to me. This very much feels like a very important integral episode of John Cena's retirement tour as champion. And because it doesn't feel like filler, I do think that there is a planet where Randy Orton could potentially win this, considering he's also in his hometown. But if history is to be believed, traditionally WWE loves to have the hometown guy lose. It's just what happens a lot of the time. Nonetheless, I do have John Cena retaining here, and this absolutely will not be a clean match. Hell, I think that there's a really strong possibility that this isn't even a good match either. Randy can still work a fantastic match, but we've seen John Cena's limitations firsthand as recently as WrestleMania 41 against Cody Rhodes, and it wasn't a particularly great match. What I don't want to see is Travis frickin' Scott make his way out to the ring and basically ruin wrestling for us for yet another PLE cycle. There is a big contingency of fans that want to see John Cena win in some sort of dastardly way or get out of there with the title in some sort of crazy way. A lot of people want the callback of John Cena slapping the ref and getting himself disqualified. I could see a world where that happens. I've even seen people theorize that maybe R-Truth is going to go out there and help help John Cena retain, which honestly would be kind of fucking insane. And I don't know that I would love or hate that. I guess I kind of just need to see that play out. So there's many ways in which this match can actually go. But I think the most obvious thing is that there will be shenanigans. No way that John Cena ends up winning this thing clean. I think he's going to do something dirty to pick up the victory here. But I am going to go with John Cena retaining here, even though I don't think it's this like certain 100% thing that will happen regardless of what happens in this universe. I do think that there is a possibility that Randy Orton could win this, but if I'm a betting man, gun to my head, I'm gonna go with John Cena here. Overall, as we go through all of these matches, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of underwhelmed by this card. It feels pretty weak. I think the biggest win for this card is the fact that the Women's Intercontinental Championship is in here, and that we have a John Cena Randy Orton match in St. Louis. But other than that, like I look at the card and I'm kind of just thinking to myself, really, like, that's it? That's the best thing that we can cook up after that disaster that was WrestleMania 41? Either way, I'm still going to watch, and you can join me in my watch along here on YouTube or over on Twitch. Check the link down in the description if you want to join me for that watch along. But folks, now it's your chance to leave me your predictions. Leave me your match by match predictions, who you think is going to win and why, and if you're predicting any surprises. But folks, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, goodbye, and get out of here.